ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio, news, music and more.
He wanted to put people on notice that he knew where all the bones were buried.
Christopher Skase charmed everyone. Even his family were pawns in his dark schemes.
He worked out he'd been used, as had his wife.
The largest corporate collapse in Australian history.
I'm Mark Humphreys. Search for ABC Rewind and look for Skase, Fall of a Tycoon on the ABC Listen app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Remember a time before Google? Well, there was one, and life was just a bit harder. But is the most used search engine in the world really as good as it once was? Today, Emmanuel Mayberg, the co-founder of 404 Media, on why chasing profits means Google isn't what it used to be. I'm Sam Hawley on Gadigal land in Sydney. This is ABC News Daily. Emmanuel, Google, it's one of the most recognised brands in the world. So much so, of course, the name became a verb, didn't it?
Yeah, to search the internet is to Google something.
It sure is. And where would we be without it? Let's face it. Life got a lot easier, didn't it, when it came about and became widely used in the early 2000s?
Yeah, I am old enough to remember the internet pre-Google. And it definitely became more convenient after it was introduced and quickly became the dominant form of searching the internet.
Yeah, so it was just better than other search engines around at the time, was it?
Yeah, there are two things that I think made Google the dominant search engine that we know it as today. The first is that it was just a better product. It was a better search engine than the competition. It wasn't the first one. It wasn't the only one, right? People remember Yahoo was a very big company. They did search. Alta Vista is one that I remember using back in the day. And Google's search engine is better, I think, for two reasons. The first is that it just more efficiently crawled and indexed the entire internet. So it had a better idea of what was out there. And then I think Google itself will probably say that its killer feature was this thing called PageRank. When you search for something, what is the top result? How are those results listed? In what order? And what PageRank essentially does is look at what other high quality, credible sites are linking to other sites. And the sites with the most links leading to them are at the top of the pile. And then I think maybe less to its credit or less of a sign of its quality is Google was very good at integrating with every other service and device out there, right? So usually when you see a search box, it is by default a Google search. When you get a new phone and you want to search the internet, Google is probably what you're going to end up with. And that is just good business as opposed to good technology.
All right, well, Emmanuel, now let's turn to the word of 2024, which was enshittification, because Google's now being associated with that word. So you better explain what it is.
Yeah, so enshittification is a term coined by a technology writer, journalist, science fiction author named Cory Doctorow. And he basically came up with this way of explaining something that I think we all feel, which is these tech platforms, they grow by providing a useful service, and they do right by their customers and their users, and they provide a lot of value. And that is sort of a land grab phase of their business. And then when it achieves something resembling a monopoly, when it becomes like a dominant player and it has this gigantic user base, then it starts turning the screws and tries to monetize this giant audience that it gathered when they start to do that, the service starts to deteriorate. So in Google's example, back in the day, you go to Google search, you type a search term, you get what everybody calls the 10 blue links. And Google always took pride in the fact that it was a very simple, easy to read, easy to use website. But today, when you go to Google and you type something, it's not just 10 blue links. It's 2 sponsored links. If you're searching for a product, it will give you like a carousel of products that are paid or are paying Google in order to appear there. And as time goes on, it just like the service becomes not as good. And that's what enshittification is.
Yeah, you sort of been served up ads all the time. And the thing is, other companies are getting really good, aren't they, at making sure when you Google something that their company or their ad appears at the top of the page.
Yeah, I think there's sort of a double-edged sword with Google becoming such a useful way of searching the internet, because once people figured out that being in the top results of any given search term is worth a lot of money, then understandably people tried immediately to figure out, well, how does PageRank work? How do we game the system that Google built in order to get to the top of the page? Because then we'll be able to monetize that. And that entire industry is called search engine optimization. And there are various levels to it. I think a lot of it is legitimate. I'm sure, you work in a newsroom, and I'm sure there's people on staff whose job it is to make sure that your reporting has the best shot of appearing at the top of search results because it's good for your company. But then there's a lot of shadier players in that space who don't have a very legitimate product to offer, but are very good at gaming the system, getting to the top of the search results, and then monetizing that in some fashion, usually with ad impressions. So you get to the top of the page, everybody clicks on it, even if they're only on it for a second because they realize it's not useful to them and they don't want to be on that page, they still get to count that as a view in the ad, and then you monetize that. And that kind of is toxic to the entire system that Google built.
Yeah, one example I've read is when people type in, healthy toddler recipes or something, or healthy toddler food, what will happen is you'll just get a whole heap of ads for particular products that you can buy at a supermarket. It's not overly useful, is it?
I mean, recipes is a good example. You can think of it another way where it's like you can just look at Google's API and see what the top search terms are, and then create the pages with the right keywords and the right formatting that Google likes at that moment in order to get to the top of the search results. And generative AI, which is fairly new, just kind of supercharges that entire process, because it used to be people had to manually generate these internet pages, this text, these images. And now with generative AI, there's a tool that does all of that automatically. So there's a lot more gaming of the system, a lot more competition in the PageRank system.
So AI is sort of being used to trick Google's page placement, if you like. But also AI is changing the search process, isn't it? Because people would have noticed that when you actually Google something now, you often get an AI-generated response at the top of the page. That's useful, right?
What you're referring to is AI Overview, which is kind of an evolution of something else Google had called snippets. And basically, a lot of the time you go to Google, you're not searching for a website or a product or a recipe. You just have like a broad question. Who was president of the United States in 1966? And it used to be you click through and then you see the answer on whatever the top result is. And what AI Overview does is Google goes to those top search results and scan that information and then presented to you at the top of the page without you having to click through. So as a user, I think a lot of the time that is very convenient and useful, but there are problems with it because that information is A, not always correct, and B, I would argue is very damaging to the entire economy of the internet.
All right. And of course, it was Lyndon B. Johnson. I did Google that, and the AI overview did come up. So it is a quick result, that's for sure. It is still useful, Google, isn't it? I mean, you do still get the answer that you want, even if you have to sift through a few things to find it now.
It's incredibly useful. It is still the dominant way of searching the internet. And I think the fact that that experience has gotten a little worse, the fact that it annoys us so much, I think speaks to how useful Google is and how integrated it is with our lives.
All right. So, Emmanuel, Google, it's argued, is shitified. I'm not sure if that's a word, but anyway. So tell me, are people actually now at the point where they are starting to look to other search engines?
I think that people are trying to find better ways to search. And on the margins, some people are turning to different search engines. My colleague, Jason, has been using something called Kagi. That is a search engine that you pay a monthly fee to use, and then it doesn't have any ads, and that is a trade-off that he was happy to make, and he's generally happy with that service. I think the vast majority of people are so used to search being free that they're not willing to do that, but what they are doing is they're finding ways to augment their search. So something that a lot of people do is they search for whatever it is they want to search for, and they add Reddit at the end of the search query in order to find the relevant information on Reddit. And that is because on Reddit, you're usually going to find actual human beings discussing the thing that you want information about. And people tend to rely on that because it's like anonymous users who are most likely human. And then finally, I think something we're also seeing is, you know, people want to find out about something in the news or a restaurant that they like. They won't necessarily search on Google. They'll search their social media. So they'll type that query into TikTok and see what TikToks people have made about it. Again, because that usually points them to actual people who have less of an interest in monetizing your views in some way.
All right. So, Emmanuel, what do you think then? What's the future for Google? It has been such a reliable tool for all of us over a very long period of time now, but does it have a very strong future ahead? Can it remain as successful if it continues down this path?
I think so. I think it's their business to lose, and I think that they are not going to lose it. One thing that they've done recently, for example, is because they see that so many people are using Google to find information on Reddit, they now have an exclusive deal with Reddit where they are the only search engine that is allowed to crawl Reddit, meaning it's the only search engine that is able to efficiently extract information from Reddit. And that's clearly the company seeing that that is where the useful information is for their users, so they're locking it down. They're obviously invested in AI. I don't think they're going to walk away from that anytime soon. I imagine Google will remain dominant, if I had to guess.
Emmanuel Mayberg is the co-founder of 404 Media. This episode was produced by Grant Walter and Sydney Peed. Audio production by Cinnamon Nippard. Our acting supervising producer is Sydney Peed. I'm Sam Hawley. Thanks for listening.